Thank you very much for joining this week's talk of the sedra that we read in the diaspora of shelach. And although we're still lagging a week behind the sedra in the land of Israel, I think that the focus that I'm going to take and the approach to the events on this week's sedra of shelach, which recounts the tragic episode of the of who are referred to as the Miraglim, uh, but actually really should be called the tourists because they were not given a mission to spy, they were given a mission to explore. And the use of the word lator in the Torah in this context is the root of the word that we have in English to tour, tourist, that comes from the word that's used in this week's Sedra. And the reason that I think that this is something that is worth listening wherever you live is because the tool, the medium that is going to give us the way to climb out of the pit of the tragic events of the report that 10 out of the 12 princes who were chosen to go on this mission brought back, with the exception of Kalev and Yehoshua, who tried to contradict that flow of negativity. And I think we see in action here how the voices of negativity, I mean, in this case, they were numerically superior as well, but I think that they are very drowning, very overwhelming. And even though Kalev and Yeshua both try valiantly, it is much harder to swim against a tide of negative feeling. When people's confidence is undermined, then it is a downward spiral. It's very hard to resist that. And so I actually want to start looking at the words that Kalev uses when he is trying to contradict the panic and hysteria that the words of the report are engendering in the people. And he says, and we will look in chapter, in the book of Bamidbar, in the book of Numbers, chapter okay, chapter 14, verse 9. Um, Actually, no, I'll go to verse 8. Im chofetz banu Hashem. If Hashem desires us, vehivi osanu el haaretz hazos, and will bring us to this land, nosana lanu, and give us eretz asher hi zovas chalav udavash, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. Ach b'Hashem al timrodu. But one thing, this is applying to all of us, this is our mission. Do not rebel against Hashem. Va'atem al tir'u. And the consequence that flows from not rebelling against Hashem is that you do not fear. When you accept Hashem's mission, you put your confidence and trust in Hashem, then that fear that undermines your confidence and drains your will, that is not there. You will not be scared. Es am haaretz, do not fear the people of the land. Ki lachmeinu heim, for they are our bread. Sor silom me'alehem. Their protection, literally their shadow, has departed from them. V'Hashem itonu. That's the crucial. When you have Hashem on your side, you have a majority of the one. Hashem is with us. Hashem itonu al tira'e. Do not be afraid of them. So why, of all the things that Kalev could choose to allay the fears of the people, does he call the indigenous inhabitants who've been described as giants, and the terrain is very hard to navigate, it's inhospitable terrain? Why does the concept of bread, why calling them our bread. What is the meaning? What is the significance of Kolev's use of bread in that? And the bread analogy goes even further because um, in chapter 15, verses 17 to 22, we have the mitzvah of challah that is actually given after the tragic response of the people to the report of the 10 who bring back this negative report, and the people cry, and the Gemara says that this is the source for this night was the night of Tisha B'Av, and Hashem said, "You cried for nothing because the people cried when they heard that report. I will fix for you for generations a reason to cry." And this really again is difficult to understand. It's not uh, a parent who is very frazzled and at the end of their tether doesn't know what threats to use, and sort of comes with something like that. Everything is meticulously calibrated, and this is something that um, that is really playing out over generations. But after all of this, and after the people, then when they see the consequences of their response, then they say, "Okay, we'll fight. We'll go up to the land." And Hashem says, "No, don't go up because you will be routed." And that's exactly what happens in the ensuing battle against the local people. The the army of the Bnei Israel is severely uh, defeated. And this is the price, this is consequence of rebelling against Hashem. And so if we look at after all of these very catastrophic events, we then come to this very rustic, almost charming few verses that give us the mitzvah of challah. Vayadaber Hashem el Moshe Lema. This is chapter 15, verse 17. And Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, Daber el Bnei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel, va'amarta aleihem, and you will say to them, Bova'achem el ha'aretz, when you will come to the land, asher ani mevi estem shama, that I am bringing you there too. V'haya ba'acholchem milechem ha'aretz, and it will be when you eat from the bread of the land, Torimu Teruma LaHashem. You shall set aside a portion. You shall literally elevate. This word Rom means high, elevating. A portion to Hashem. Reshis Arisosechem. The first of your kneading of challah. Torimu Teruma. Kisrumas Geren. Cain Torimu Osa. As the first of the eating, you shall set aside a loaf as a portion, like the portion of the threshing floor, so you will set it aside. And so this seems to be really, on the one hand, very, very charming and very calming, but after the people have been so floored by uh, by the events of that night, to have this charming scene of bread and dough, how is that actually going to help a healing process? And I would suggest that although the generation who came out of Egypt at this point with their response to the report, they are they are told they will not go into the land of Israel. They are going, the sojourn in the desert is going to be lengthened by 40 years, a year for every day of the mission that was supposed to explore the land of Israel according to the brief of Hashem. And so during these 40 years, that generation would die out. However, their descendants, their children, Hashem is giving them the comfort of continuity. And not only the comfort of continuity that they will enter the land, that Hashem is bringing them to the land. They shouldn't think that it all ends in the desert for the entire people. but they are going to go into the land. They are going to sow the wheat. They are going to harvest the wheat, and they are going to bake bread. And again, this we have to think: what is that connection between the land and between the bread, between the uh, that is going to enable us to correct our attitude, to resist that flow of negativity that emanates from the uh, catastrophic vision of the spies as everything that they witness on their mission to the land that Hashem has promised us, they interpret negatively. And so let us go now to chapter 8 in Devarim as a fast forward, because I think it gives us a very prescient reason why bread is so important, particularly at this juncture. And so in chapter 8, and we will go to start actually, uh, let's start with verse 1 of chapter 8 in Devarim. Kol ha-mitzvah asher anochi mitzavcha hayom. All the commandment, the entire commandment that I am commanding you today, tishmuru lasos laman tichyun. You shall observe to perform so that you will live. Uravisem, and you will increase. Uvosem birishtem es haaretz asher nishba Hashem lavosechem, and you will come and you will inherit the land that Hashem swore to your fathers. V'zacharta es kol haderech asher holchilcha Hashem Elohecha, and you will remember all the way that Hashem your God has brought you. Ze arba'im shana, this 40 years. Bamidbar leman anoscha lenasoscha, in order to afflict you and to test you. Lodas es asher bilvavecha, to know what is in your heart. Hasishmer mitzvosav imlo, will you observe, guard his commandments or not? And then we carry on that Hashem has provided us with mon. Asher lo yodata velo yudun avasecha, that you had not known and your fathers had not known. Leman hodiacha kilo al halechem levado yichyeh ha'adam, that the man does not live by bread alone. Ki al kol motzei fi Hashem yichyeh ha'adam, but everything that comes out of the mouth of Hashem, that is what man will live by. And then we have the source of the commandment. We have the fact that Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Chita U'Se'ora, Gefen U'Se'ena, V'Rimen, Eretz Zeis Shemen U'Dvash, Eretz Asher Lo B'Miskonos Tochel Bo Lechem. So the famous verse that talks about the 7 species: land, wheat, barley, vine, fig, pomegranate, olives, olive oil, and date honey. A land that we will not eat bread in poverty. And then it carries on, verse 10, chapter 8 in Devarim. Va'achalta v'savata uverachta es Hashem Elokecha, and you will eat and you will be satisfied and you will bless the Lord your God. So I'm suggesting that the crucial component of the bread that's referenced in the sedra of shelach lecha is linking up to this view of bread that we read in Devarim, and that is going to help us remedy. And we use the word tikkun, which literally means a repair, because there was damage caused by the report of the 10 people who were sent on this mission, and that damage and the response to the report has to be rectified. And we have an opportunity every time we eat bread to really uh, remedy that particular flaw that gave rise to this lack of faith and confidence in Hashem. How can we do this? Because when we see the whole process of bread, which is considered a staple, this is the source that we will say the special prayer, benching grace after meals after we have bread. That is a unique opportunity for us on a daily basis to remedy the sins that were committed in this week's sedra. And if we look at the various paragraphs of Birchat Hamazon, the grace, as it's called, grace after meals, the first paragraph of benching, of grace after meals, is actually us blessing Hashem. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hazon es haolam kulo v'tuvo. This is our unique opportunity that we are, and Hashem is providing us um, that with this food. Yet we, in giving our thanks, in recognizing that Hashem is providing the entire planet universe with sustenance, we are grounding our daily activities. And this the sedra of shelach lecha was supposed to be the sedra of transition from the highly spiritual, surreal land and time in the desert and moving into the land and the activities that were going to be associated with the land of Israel, where they would be engaged in the everyday activities of farming, of business, uh, of providing for themselves. Yet they would have to remember that only by linking everything to Hashem and expressing that gratitude to Hashem are they going to be able to avoid the pitfall of the lack of confidence that led to the report and the response to the report of the spies. And so I think that perhaps Kolev is picking up when he says that the people of the land are our bread. He is saying when you are going to, perhaps with prophetic vision, when you are going to come to the land and go through the process of making bread and blessing, va'achalta v'savata uveirachta, then you that is going to be your source of confidence and connection, and no enemy is going to be able to touch you. And this is I think the concept. We find it in Pirkei Avot as well. Um, Another way of expressing it is chapter 3, which we actually read this week, please God. Chapter 3, verse 21. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Rabbi Elazar the son of Azariah says, Im ein kemach ein Torah, im ein Torah ein kemach. If there is no flour, there is no Torah. If there is no Torah, there is no flour. So, ever the practical Mishnah, religion, we know that human beings need to eat, but it is not by bread alone. And we have to know, just like, God forbid, in times of famine, we are going to be enfeebled, we are going to be susceptible to all kinds of physical and spiritual maladies. But equally, we have to know that if there is no Torah, just by having the flour, just by having the sustenance, that's not going to make us strong. Our strength derives from the right attitude towards our bread. And this maybe is part of the reference that Kolev is referring to when he talks about the people, the local inhabitants of Canaan being our bread. Let us take that opportunity. And while I described the first paragraph of Grace After Meals as that unique opportunity to bless Hashem, to acknowledge that all the entire universe is being sustained and nourished by Hashem. The second paragraph goes on to link that with the gift of the land of Israel. Al ha'eretz chemda tova urchova sheretzisa ve'chaltas avosenu. So we are thanking Hashem for this gift of the land of Israel. And this is something that we all have to internalize, we all have to be aware of. The intrinsic holiness, the Torah of Israel, the people of Israel, and the land of Israel are interwoven. They are a cord that can never be sundered. And there's actually even a halacha that in a chutz la'aretz, one is buried in a coffin, in an oron, because we don't want the tumah, the impurity of the diaspora to enter into the deceased as they are lying in the ground. Whereas in the land of Israel, one is not buried in a coffin, one is buried in a shroud, so that one can be absorbed by that unique kedusha, that unique holiness of the land of Israel. And it is about valuing that and respecting that, and understanding that sometimes life may have challenges, and we don't understand why certain things happen, but we are just given that bedrock of faith and security from the words in this week's portion from Kalev's reference, linking it up to bread, which gives us at any time and place throughout Jewish history, gives us this opportunity to think about Hashem in our lives, Hashem in our sustenance, and the centrality of the land of Israel. And I just want to have a look at the kind of person, the personality that we build up of Kalev. And if we look at the early part of the sedra, of go back to shelach lecha, and we see that Kalev is the one who, and we will just write. So the rest of the group we have it in chapter 13, verse 21, and we have everything in the plural. Vayalu, and they went up. Vayasul es haaretz mimidbar sin, and they toured the land from the wilderness of Sin, ad Rechov Levo Chamos, to the expanse at the approach to Hamas. Vayalu Vanegev, and they ascended in the south. Vayovo ad Chevron, and he came to Chevron. Rashi picks up on this sudden change to the singular, that actually, well, I will read the exact words of Rashi. Okay, Vayovo ad Chevron, and he arrived at Chevron. Kalev levado holach sham. Kalev alone went there. Venishtatach, and prostrated himself in prayer, al kivrei ovos, over the graves of the fathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Shelo yehei nisos lechaverov, so that he should not be persuaded by his companions, lihios ba'atzosom, to be party to that plan, to their plan. V'chein hu amar, and so it says, V'lo etein es haaretz asher dorach ba, and to him I will give the land upon which he trod. Uksiv, and it's written, Vayitnu leKalev es Chevron, and they gave Chevron to Kalev. So, at the beginning of the mission, Kalev is already aware that there are undercurrents, that there is a crisis of confidence. These princes are getting anxious about what they're seeing, and he connects with the fathers that we have in the sedra of Bereshit, in the book of Bereshit rather. And there is this concept that the although the generation that came out of Egypt, they are called Shemos Jews. They are the Jews that feature in the book of the Exodus, the book that retells the events of the Exodus. However, in order to be successful, in order to really be able to thrive in the land of Israel, we need to be voracious Jews as well, just like Kolev is showing us here, because by going to the burial place, the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah, where Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are buried, he is saying, I am connecting the promises that were given to my forefathers. I am getting the encouragement of their Mesirat Nefesh, their intense dedication and effort, their managing to deal with all the travails and all the challenges that came their way. And yes, there was the end of the book of Bereshit, but just like the book of Shemos opens with Yosef saying very clearly that I want to be buried in the land of my fathers, we cannot survive merely as Exodus Jews. We cannot say that it's only since leaving the land of Egypt that's when our history starts. It is the vital importance of connecting to the messages, to the inspirational fathers and mothers that we learn about in the book of Bereshit, and we bring those along with the experience of being in Egypt and leaving Egypt. And that is going to enable us to counteract the endless spiral of disaster that the events of this week's Sedra of Shelach Lecha seem to herald. And I think it is through the bread that Kalev mentions, through the bread of challah, and through the bread, the attitude towards bread, that is spelt out very clearly in chapter 8 of Devarim. All of these enable us on a regular, potentially daily basis in our lives to tap into that current of gratitude, spirituality, appreciation for the land of Israel, its unique place in our history, in our capacity to live fully Jewish lives. And in so doing, we are going to be able to rectify the sin of the events that happened in this week's Sedra, and please God that even the Tisha B'Av that is coming, this Shabbos is the Shabbos of blessing the new moon for the month of Tammuz, and 3 weeks after 17th of Tammuz we have Tisha B'Av. So we're approaching these months that talk about the tragic events of Tisha B'Av. We have a reference to Tisha B'Av in the Sedra of Shelach Lecha with the reaction, the cries of the people as they heard the report. But we have, through our daily bread, a way to counteract that, and really with this, with the right attitude towards our bread, with the right blessings before and after, we are able to climb out of this terrible pit and go forward, please God, speedily in our times. Wishing you a very good Shabbos.